There is a strange and silent power in the man who does not reach for what everyone else is chasing, the man who does not grasp, does not cling, and does not beg to be seen. You have felt it before. In the classroom, the office, the cafe, one man stands apart, not because of his words, but because of what he does not say, not because of his charm, but because of what he withholds. He walks slowly. He listens more than he speaks. And something in him refuses the dance of approval, and women notice. This is not about arrogance. It is not about playing games or pretending to be better than others. It is something far more subtle and far more real. A self-contained strength that says, "I will not collapse if you walk away." Jean-Paul Sartre, the French philosopher best known for his existentialist worldview, understood this with disturbing clarity. In a world where love is often confused with possession, Sartre dared to propose that true love could only exist between two fundamentally free beings, neither of whom needed the other to complete themselves. He believed that needing someone was not the same as loving them. In fact, he warned that need can become a form of control disguised as affection, and for many women, often conditioned to be the emotional caretakers, to rescue or be rescued, there is something undeniably magnetic about the rare man who steps outside that pattern, who says, "I am whole, with or without you." This idea feels uncomfortable, even threatening. We live in a time that celebrates connection, vulnerability, togetherness. So, to say that one must be independent, even emotionally sovereign, to be truly desirable, it feels almost cruel. But it is not cruelty. It is clarity, and clarity can feel cold before it feels freeing. This is not a gender war. This is not a blueprint for manipulation or aloofness. This is about energy, polarity, boundaries. It is about what happens when a person, man or woman, stops trying to fill the void by reaching outward, and instead fills it inward, with presence, purpose, and silence. This idea is ancient. It did not begin with Sartre, but he named it in a time when few were willing to. And today, when relationships are built on dopamine hits, anxious texting, and fragile attachment, his insight may be more important than ever. So, in this video, we are going to go deep, into the roots of attraction, into the psychology of need, into history, mythology, and philosophy, and into yourself. Because maybe the love you want is not found by becoming more desirable, but by becoming more whole. Shall we begin? To understand Sartre's idea that women fall for rare men who do not need them, we must go far beyond his writings. This idea did not originate in 20th century Paris cafes or smoky philosophical salons. It is etched in the bones of history. It whispers through ancient myths, medieval love poetry, and even the cold strategies of empires. The tension between need and desire, between independence and intimacy, is one of the oldest human paradoxes. But first, what exactly do we mean by not needing? To not need someone does not mean to be cold, heartless, or indifferent. It means that one's emotional stability, purpose, and identity are not dependent on another person's validation. It is about sovereignty of the soul. To need someone in the Sartrean sense is to make them your crutch. To love someone, on the other hand, is to walk beside them freely, not lean on them to carry your weight. In relationships, most people confuse attachment for love, and society rewards this confusion. Look at how movies portray romance, the desperate chase, the tearful pleas, the fear of being left. We glorify obsession and call it passion. We watch lovers collapse into each other and call it intimacy. But history offers a more nuanced lens. In ancient Greece, the philosopher Plato described two kinds of love: eros, a consuming, often desperate desire for union, and agape, a selfless, transcendent kind of love. Eros wants to possess. Agape wants to understand. One springs from lack, the other from abundance. And it is that abundance, what Sartre called existential fullness, that rare men carry with them. A man who has found meaning within himself no longer needs a woman to mirror back his worth. Ironically, that is the kind of man who becomes the mirror for others. In the East, this principle was embedded in the teachings of Taoism and Zen. The Taoist sage does not chase. He aligns. He does not strive for love. He becomes love by being in harmony with himself. In the Tao Te Ching, it is written, "He who stands on tiptoe is not steady. He who reveals himself is not luminous. The one who is at peace with his own solitude, who is not grasping, emits a quiet power." This kind of man draws others, not with force, but with presence. We see similar themes in the mystic Sufi tradition. Rumi, the great poet, once said, "Do not seek love. Seek to remove the barriers you have built against it." That is what the rare man does. He does not perform or seduce. He removes the noise. He sits still in his truth, and women who have been surrounded by emotional chaos, performative masculinity, or needy energy sense something different in him. A sanctuary. But let us not overly romanticize history. In many cultures, men were taught to dominate, not detach. Neediness was not seen as weak, but was replaced by a different form of insecurity: control. Patriarchal systems have long feared women's independence, and so men were encouraged to see women not as equals, but as possessions. In this model, a man AS need to own a woman replaced his need to emotionally depend on her, but both came from the same lack of self. This is where Sartre's perspective becomes radical. Sartre lived during a time of war, political upheaval, and existential dread. With his partner, Simone de Beauvoir, he helped pioneer existentialist thought, the belief that life has no intrinsic meaning except what we create. In this framework, the need for another person becomes dangerous. Why? Because it tempts us to abandon our freedom. Sartre believed that needing someone meant reducing them to a function. You do not see them clearly anymore. You see what they give you: comfort, status, safety. And once you reduce them to a function, you stop loving them as a person. Real love, he said, only exists between two sovereign people, each capable of walking away and yet choosing to stay. In this view, the rare man who does not need a woman is not emotionally distant. He is emotionally free, and his freedom makes his love more powerful, not less. It is not offered out of desperation, but out of abundance. Now let us go deeper. In medieval courtly love literature, think Lancelot and Guinevere or Tristan and Isolde, the knight often adored a woman from afar. He served her, but he did not claim her. This distance, this tension, was part of the longing. The man who did not need to possess her physically still longed for her spiritually. Again, we find that strange duality, the absence of need, yet the fullness of desire. Fast forward to today, and we still see this dynamic, but now it is buried beneath modern noise. Dating apps, filtered images, and instant gratification have made many people emotionally impatient. The idea of sitting with uncertainty, of not knowing where you stand, has become intolerable. But the rare man, he tolerates it, he welcomes it, because he is not trying to fill an emptiness. He is trying to share a fullness. What has changed, then? Society has shifted. Women are no longer economically dependent on men, and many have cultivated emotional independence too. The result is a deeper hunger for men who can match that independence, not men who shrink in the face of it. A woman who has done the inner work will not be seduced by shallow charm. She will be drawn to the man who sees her clearly but does not seek to complete himself through her, because he already is complete. This is not about being aloof or unavailable. This is about being whole. And in the dance of masculine and feminine energy, wholeness is magnetic. Masculine energy in its true form is grounded, directed, self-possessed. Feminine energy in its essence is expressive, intuitive, and expansive. When a man is deeply rooted in his own being, the feminine feels safe to unfold, not because he controls her, but because he does not collapse under her. That is why Sartre's idea, so simple yet so disruptive, still resonates. The man who does not need her becomes the man she can trust. Not because he is cold, but because he is centered. Not because he withholds love, but because his love does not come from a place of fear. So here is the paradox. The less you need, the more you attract. Not because you are playing games, but because your presence itself is a refuge. And in a world full of noise, the one who needs nothing becomes everything. Let us now step into the mind. Why is it that people are drawn to those who do not need them? Why do women, especially those who have matured through heartbreak and self-discovery, find themselves deeply attracted to men who stand on their own emotional ground? To understand this, we must explore one of the most powerful and misunderstood forces in human psychology: attachment. The roots of attachment theory were first laid down by John Bowlby, a British psychoanalyst in the mid-20th century. He discovered that the way we bond with our caregivers in childhood shapes the way we relate to partners in adulthood. Broadly speaking, there are 4 types of attachment: secure, anxious, avoidant, and disorganized. Now imagine a man with an anxious attachment style. He fears abandonment. He constantly seeks reassurance. He becomes clingy, overly accommodating, even desperate for connection. This is the man who texts too much, who tries too hard, who loses himself in pursuit of love. Now, picture another man. Still, calm, emotionally grounded. He likes connection, but he does not collapse in its absence. He is not waiting to be chosen. He has already chosen himself. This man most likely has a secure attachment style, or has consciously built one. To the emotionally mature woman, the second man offers something precious: safety without suffocation. His love does not demand. It invites. His energy does not pull. It holds. And that, in psychological terms, is deeply regulating to the nervous system. Modern psychology shows us that humans are biologically wired to seek co-regulation, emotional balance through others. But the mature soul does not want to be rescued. It wants to be met. And when a man has done his inner work, when he has faced his loneliness, processed his wounds, found his own meaning, he becomes emotionally regulated in himself. His presence regulates others without him even trying. This is not charisma. It is coherence. Women feel it in the body before they ever name it with words. A calm nervous system. A slow voice. A gaze that sees but does not consume. A kind of internal silence. And it is rare, because few men have the courage to build it. Many prefer performance over presence. Many distract themselves with status, sex, or power. But women, especially those who have been hurt by these performances, begin to crave something deeper. They crave the man who does not need them to fix him, worship him, or make him feel like a man. They crave the man who has already faced himself. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." That kind of man becomes magnetic, not because he chases connection, but because his life itself radiates meaning. Let us go further. Evolutionary psychology provides another perspective. According to this theory, attraction is partly driven by signals of fitness, not just physical, but psychological and social fitness. A man who is emotionally sovereign, who does not need external validation to feel secure, sends a clear signal. I can survive. I can lead. I can hold space. This is attractive not because it plays into gender stereotypes, but because it speaks to a deeper biological instinct. The instinct to bond with someone who can help you thrive. But this instinct has evolved. Today, women are not just looking for protectors. They are looking for partners. And the new form of strength is not dominance. It is self-mastery. The rare man is not the loudest or the most dominant. He is the one who knows himself and is not shaken by emotional chaos. He listens before reacting. He chooses depth over distraction. He is not perfect, but he is present. This brings us to a powerful psychological concept: differentiation of self. Coined by therapist Murray Bowen, differentiation is the ability to remain emotionally grounded and true to oneself, even while deeply connected to others. A man who is differentiated does not disappear into a relationship. He does not become codependent, nor does he wall himself off in avoidance. He stays rooted in his identity, even while loving deeply. To a woman who has struggled with partners who disappear or who become emotionally dependent, this quality is magnetic. It means she does not have to mother him. She does not have to chase him. She can relax into her feminine energy, because his masculine energy is not leaking, grasping, or proving. This is not about playing roles, it is about polarity. When a man is anchored, the woman is freed. And when a woman is emotionally sovereign, the man is invited, not needed. This is where Sartre's idea becomes real, not just philosophical. He warned that relationships based on need eventually turn into power games. But relationships based on freedom create space for authentic connection. Now consider this. In today's world, emotional availability is rare, but emotional independence is even rarer. Many people speak the language of healing and self-love, but they still operate from fear. They date to fill a hole, not to share a hole. The rare man is different. He is not performing emotional health. He has earned it, and women who have done the work will recognize him. Let us tie this back to social dynamics. In modern dating culture, many people chase what they think they want, only to feel disappointed once they have it. Why? Because what we want is often shaped by insecurity. But what we are drawn to, at the level of the nervous system, is wholeness, stillness, coherence. The man who does not need a woman does not trigger anxiety. He dissolves it. He does not overwhelm the feminine. He creates a space for it to breathe. And that space is more seductive than anything loud or flashy. This is not a blueprint for superiority. It is a call to inner work. Because the truth is, anyone, man or woman, can become this rare presence. It requires facing your fears, sitting with your loneliness, releasing the stories that say you are only lovable if you perform. It requires learning to regulate your emotions, not through others but through your own nervous system, breath, and presence. When you stop needing, you start seeing. And in that clarity, love becomes a choice, not a transaction. So ask yourself, do you seek people to fill your silence, or do you let your silence speak? Do you collapse when left alone, or do you expand? Do you chase attention, or do you carry presence? These questions are not meant to shame. They are meant to awaken, because the rare man is not born. He is built, in silence, in solitude, in the sacred space between need and freedom. And the more he builds himself, the more love stops being a rescue and becomes a revelation. What happens when a man builds himself in silence, but the world teaches him that he must always be loud? What happens when a woman craves emotional depth, but is surrounded by men addicted to attention, not awareness? This dissonance between what we deeply need and what the culture constantly pushes is not just frustrating, it is deeply wounding, and the consequences stretch far beyond the world of dating. At the heart of this dynamic lies a universal fear, the fear of being alone with oneself. When a man does not know who he is without applause, he becomes dependent on it. His self-worth becomes a performance, not a presence. He measures his value by how many women want him, how many people admire him, how loud his life appears, rather than how deeply he is rooted in truth. And when a woman is taught that her worth lies in being needed, she often overextends. She becomes the emotional caregiver, the therapist, the validator. She gives love not as an expression of abundance, but as a currency to feel safe. This is the tragedy Sartre warned us about, that love, when rooted in need, becomes a kind of mutual manipulation. One clings, one rescues, one dominates, one submits. The relationship becomes a battlefield disguised as a bond, and over time, this destroys the very thing love is meant to protect: freedom. Let us bring this down to lived experience. Think of the woman who falls again and again for emotionally unavailable men. She tells herself, "I can fix him." She confuses intensity with intimacy, and each time he withdraws, she feels rejected, not because he is her match, but because he activates a wound that predates him. Or the man who gives everything too quickly, texting constantly, over-investing, bending his identity to be liked. He wants to be chosen so badly that he forgets to choose himself. And when the woman pulls away, he spirals, not because she was the one, but because she became a mirror for his insecurity. Both patterns have one thing in common. They are not grounded in sovereignty. They are driven by fear. Fear of rejection, of abandonment, of being unworthy and less needed. This is the spiritual cost of not knowing how to be whole, and society does not help. The modern world rewards performance, not presence. It glamorizes attention, not intimacy. It teaches men that they must earn love through dominance or charm, and women that they must earn it through sacrifice or seduction. But when two people meet from a place of incompleteness, they do not love each other. They consume each other. So what does this create? Emotional burnout, men who feel drained by their own masks, women who feel exhausted from carrying the emotional labor of relationships. A dating culture flooded with confusion, disillusionment, and silent heartbreak. Fragmented identity. When a man always adjusts who he is to be desired, he loses access to his true self. His masculinity becomes reactive, not rooted. He either hardens into stoicism or collapses into over-accommodation. Neither is authentic. Both are defenses, eroded confidence. When a woman pours herself into someone who does not even know how to receive her, she begins to question her own worth. She may become cynical, distrustful. She may retreat emotionally, or worse, settle for less, believing rare men do not exist. Stalled growth. Both people become locked in cycles, repeating the same stories, the same wounds, the same outcomes, because they are relating from a place of lack, not fullness. But here's the deeper truth. Every time we fall for someone who does not truly see us, we are unconsciously trying to resolve a story from the past. A father who was absent. A mother who withheld affection. A teenage wound of being rejected. And in adulthood, we seek to win the very love that once hurt us, believing that doing so will finally make us whole. Yet it never does. Because no one can rescue us from the parts of ourselves we refuse to sit with. This is where personal power is lost, not in rejection, but in our inability to befriend our own solitude. Let us reflect on the historical echoes of this. In mythologies across the world, there is a recurring pattern. The hero must first go into the wilderness alone before he earns the right to love fully. In the Sufi tradition, the lover must burn in longing, must become nothing, before union becomes divine. In Jungian psychology, the man must confront the shadow, his buried fears, his unlived desires, before he becomes whole. But what happens when we bypass this inner journey? We project our unmet needs onto others. We demand that others validate what we have not yet owned, and this always leads to suffering. This is why the man who does not need a woman is so rare. Not because he is detached, but because he has faced the pain that most people run from. And that facing, that solitude, that inner stillness, creates a magnetism that no amount of performance can replicate. Because when a man no longer fears his own aloneness, he becomes the safest space a woman can enter. He does not cling. He does not collapse. He holds. And in return, the woman feels free to unfold, not to complete him, but to dance beside him. So, where does this leave us? With a mirror, the real consequence of ignoring Sartre as truth is that we waste time chasing relationships that are echoes of our wounds, not expressions of our soul. We fall in love with pain dressed as passion. We mistake chaos for chemistry, and we keep wondering why we feel empty, even when someone is lying next to us. But the answer has never been about finding the right person. It has always been about becoming the rare presence we ourselves are drawn to. And that presence does not arise by accident. It arises when we stop trying to be needed and start learning how to be whole. When you meet someone who does not need you, but still chooses to love you, that is sacred. Because their love is not a strategy. It is a gift. And the more we heal ourselves, the more we become ready to receive it. The rare man walks alone, not because he is unloved, but because he has learned that love cannot be real if it comes from fear. And the rare woman is drawn to him, not because he completes her, but because his freedom reminds her of her own. We have seen the patterns. We have traced the wounds. We have looked into the historical mirrors, the psychological truths, the personal consequences. But knowing is not enough. If it stays in the head, it becomes just another idea. The real shift begins when it reaches the heart, when we live differently. To become one of the rare men who do not need, but still love deeply. To become one of the rare women who are not desperate to be chosen, but choose themselves first. We need practices, not perfection. Daily steps, not dramatic changes. Because healing, in truth, is not a breakthrough. It is a devotion. 1. Befriend your solitude. This is where it all begins. Not the kind of loneliness that numbs itself with distractions, but the kind of solitude that makes you uncomfortable, until it transforms you. Take 1 hour a day, no phone, no external stimulation, and just be with yourself. Journal. Walk in silence. Reflect. Cry if needed. Let the discomfort rise. It is your teacher. Ask yourself, who am I when no one is watching? What am I running from in the silence? Do I even like who I am when I'm alone? This is not easy, but every time you survive your own silence, you become less dependent on others to fill it, and that, quietly, makes you powerful. 2. Break the fantasy. Many relationships fail not because of who the other person is, but because of who we imagine them to be. We fall for the idea. We love the potential. We stay for the illusion. A practice. When you find yourself idealizing someone, write down a list of who they really are. Not what you hope, not what they could become, but what they show you consistently. Love cannot bloom where truth is denied. This is especially vital if you have a tendency to fix or save others. Ask yourself, am I in love with who they are, or with who I hope they will become? Am I trying to rescue someone instead of respecting myself? Awareness breaks the spell, and once the fantasy is gone, you stop confusing emotional pain with romantic passion. 3. Develop sovereign routines. Dependency thrives in emotional chaos. Sovereignty grows through ritual. Create a life that centers you before anyone else enters it. This is not selfishness. This is spiritual hygiene. Wake up and move your body. Practice breathwork or prayer. Journal your intentions. Nourish your body with food that respects your vitality. Set boundaries around your energy. These small rituals remind your nervous system, I am safe within myself. You are no longer waiting to be regulated by someone else's attention. 4. Learn the art of sacred boundaries. Many people confuse boundaries with rejection, but boundaries are not walls. They are doorways with locks. A man who does not need a woman knows how to say, I desire connection, but not at the cost of my self-respect. A woman who has learned to love herself will say, I can love you deeply, but I will not abandon myself in the process. Write down what behaviors you will no longer tolerate: emotional unavailability, inconsistency, breadcrumbing. What values you will not compromise: honesty, kindness, clarity. What emotional needs are yours to fulfill, and not someone else's responsibility. Boundaries do not push love away, they purify it. 5. Inner child work. Reparenting your wounds. Most of our attachment wounds were formed before we could even speak. A parent who was emotionally unavailable. A household that taught love must be earned. A moment of rejection that felt like life or death. Now, as adults, we search for partners to heal what our parents could not give. But no romantic partner can fix a wound that predates them. The work must be yours. Close your eyes. Imagine the younger version of yourself, 5, 9, 14 years old. Ask, what did this child need that they never received? How can I give that now, through daily action? Speak to yourself gently, with grace, with patience. That voice inside that says, I'm not enough unless I'm needed. That is a child trying to survive. But you are no longer a child. You get to choose new patterns. 6. Reclaim your masculine or feminine archetype. We live in a world that mocks masculinity and overperforms femininity, but both are sacred energies. To the man, you are not more masculine by avoiding emotion. You are not stronger by performing detachment. Real masculinity is depth, presence, groundedness, the ability to hold chaos without absorbing it. Spend time in spaces that cultivate inner stillness. Stoic philosophy, journaling, disciplined training, silence in nature. To the woman, you are not more feminine by being submissive to wounded men. You are not softer by abandoning your discernment. Real feminine energy is intuitive, wild, nurturing, fierce. It is the creative force that transforms. Spend time creating, listening, dancing, praying, feeling without shame. Honor the version of you that does not shrink to be chosen. 7. Love without clinging. Let go without hatred. This is the highest practice, and it takes time. To love without needing. To let go without bitterness. To walk away not because you stopped loving, but because you started loving yourself more. Try this reflection after a breakup or disappointment. What did this person show me about myself, my wounds, my desires, my needs? What lesson am I taking, not to armor my heart, but to refine it? How can I remain open to love without repeating this pattern? Do not rush healing. Do not shame your softness. Just let pain become your teacher and not your identity. We are not here to be perfect. We are here to become whole. And wholeness does not mean you will never want love. It means you will never again trade your soul just to feel wanted. When a man no longer needs a woman, he can finally see her. When a woman no longer seeks validation, she can finally receive truth. And when two people meet from that place of fullness, not lack, love becomes a sanctuary, not a survival strategy. Let me know when you're ready for the final section. So, what are we really talking about? Not about men who become cold or emotionally unavailable. Not about women who stop loving or needing anyone ever again. But about something deeper. A reclamation of power that has been misunderstood for centuries. You see, when Sartre said that hell is other people, he was not saying that connection is evil. He was pointing to a deeper existential truth, that most people live their entire lives through the gaze of others. They become what they think the world wants from them. They contort themselves to be desired, to be accepted, to not be alone. And so many of us, perhaps even you, have learned to fear being self-sufficient. We think, if I don't need them, will they still love me? But the real tragedy is when we are loved only because we need. Because then it is not love. It is dependency wearing a romantic mask. True love cannot blossom where desperation lives. It grows in freedom, in sovereignty, in the silence between two people who choose each other, fully aware that they do not have to. That is why rare men who do not need women become magnetic, not because they are distant or indifferent, but because they have become whole. And in that wholeness, they make space for a woman to be her full self too. Not a savior, not a decoration, not a mother in disguise, but a partner in truth. This is not a game. It is not a tactic to win in dating. It is the slow and sacred process of becoming real. And this process, it hurts sometimes, because you will lose people. People who only liked you needy. People who preferred you silent, smaller, always reaching. People who fed off your unhealed wounds. But in that loss, you gain everything. You gain peace, integrity, emotional clarity. You gain the ability to say, I want love, but I no longer chase it. I care deeply, but I will not beg for your presence. I am open, but I am no longer hollow. And that, paradoxically, is when the right people arrive. Because when you stop needing to be chosen, you begin to choose. When you stop craving rescue, you become your own refuge. Look back through history. The mystics, the philosophers, the saints, they all taught the same truth. You must know who you are without others before you can fully love with others. Not the identity others gave you, not the mask you built for survival, but the essence beneath the performance. That is what Sartre hinted at. That is what modern psychology confirms. That is what your soul already knows. Love becomes real only when you no longer need it to complete you. So pause. Breathe. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are just remembering. And the more you remember, the more you return to your own presence, the more you will realize this powerful truth. You were never meant to be half of anything. You are already whole. If something stirred in you today, a quiet recognition, a memory, a question you have not asked in years, then you are exactly where you need to be. Because this space is not for surface-level noise. It is not for quick fixes or shallow motivation. This is a space for the seekers, for those who want to live with depth, with clarity, with courage, for those who are tired of pretending, performing, or proving, for those who know that real strength is found in self-awareness, and that true love begins with truth. You do not have to be perfect to begin. You do not need all the answers. You only need a willingness to look inward, to pause, to reflect, to grow. So if you felt resonance here, if this video gave you language for something you have been feeling, subscribe. Not because I asked, but because you are ready to walk this path more consciously. Here, we blend the wisdom of ancient philosophers with modern psychology. We explore the stories of history not to escape the present, but to understand it. We unpack emotional truths, relationship patterns, identity struggles, with honesty and grace. You will not be judged for your wounds here. You will not be rushed through your healing. We are building something different, a community rooted in emotional intelligence, a journey guided by curiosity and courage, a shared belief that reclaiming your power is not about dominance, it is about alignment. So ask yourself, what part of me did this video awaken? What am I finally ready to face, forgive, or release? What would my life feel like if I stopped chasing validation and started choosing wholeness? If that question matters to you, stay. Subscribe, reflect, return to yourself. This is just the beginning, and you do not have to walk it alone.